Hello friends and good morning. Today we're going to be taking a look at a system that I haven't been to in 5 years. So now we're going to get to play the fun game of what does it all look like? Does it look the same? What's changed? These are my favorite kind of inspections because you never really know what you're going to walk into. Let's get into it. So back in 2019 when I was here, it was a single 1,500 gallon tank with an access cap on the front, riser in the middle, and then it had two seepage pits with access on both. So we're gonna go ahead, find all of those access points, get everything open, see, does the baffle still look the same? What's the solids look like? Is the liquid level correct? And then we're gonna take a look inside the pits and see what's the liquid level measurements look like. We'll take the measurements from 2019, compare them to the measurements of today, see how much space we lost, see what it's doing, and then we're gonna introduce some water into the system. And the reason we wanna do that is as these dry wells age, they're gonna start to hold a little bit of water, but they're basically gonna still be draining, or hopefully they're still draining. We'll see in a little bit when we get into it. But we wanna put some water through just to make sure that everything's still flowing and draining correctly, make sure the pipes are open, make sure there's nothing squirrely going on. I'll see you in a few seconds outside. Alrighty, so here we are. We got all of our system parts found. We got the front of the tank, middle of the tank-ish, back area with the riser, first dry well, second dry well. The fun part is, pop this open, full of spiders, right? And we can also see there's a little cockeyed. So in a second, we're gonna knock all those webs out of the way and see if it's actually lost some of its joint. The issue with a cockeyed clean out is that if it's not centered, usually that means the seal's broken and you run the risk of roots, bugs, grass, all sorts of other junk getting into the tank. Mainly the biggest concern will be groundwater. So you want to make sure you have a nice good seal so that way groundwater does not get into your system or anything silly getting in there. I've seen snakes and all sorts of things work their way into tanks, even underneath of these little clean outs. Not something fun you want to have floating around in your tank though. Alrighty, so we gone ahead and gone outside. We found the tank. So we got the front of the tank here. We got the back end of the tank with the riser over here. First pit over there and second pit over there. So first thing we notice on this one is that the clean out's cockeyed. So our first question is, well, did something hit it? Because it wasn't cockeyed last time. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look inside of here. And we can actually see that somebody has put the PVC pipe over top of the old cast iron pipe. Now this PVC did not exist when we were here previously, so that means something happened to the cast iron part. Usually when we find that the cast iron pipe has been topped up with PVC, it means somebody smacked it with a mower or hit it with something, right? So the big concern with that is that if you don't have a good seal, if you don't have the PVC properly sat right, you're gonna have groundwater get into it, right? So you're gonna have leaks, you're gonna have soil, roots potentially. We got this big guy right close to it, right? Trees are notorious for getting roots into septic systems, so it's a good idea to be really cautious and conscious of what's around it, and also to make sure that if you do hit the PVC clean out that you get it fixed. Alrighty, so we went ahead and popped open this riser. We can see back here, that's the baffle, right? The baffle's PVC, which is in good shape. We can see that there's a little bit of roots working their way in through the seal on the riser. Now those roots weren't there back in 2019, but it doesn't look too bad. If only in 5 years we got those little spaghetti size roots, it's not terrible, but we are still gonna recommend that they reseal. It's super important to make sure that you always check that the baffle's there, right? And the reason why, the baffle's what prevents all the scum from getting out of the tank and into the distribution box or the dry wells, and can cause all sorts of problems and clogs, right? So when you have a PVC baffle, the odds of it not being there, very low, right? Generally when this house was built, they would have been using concrete. The old concrete baffle, of course, fell off, and then they would put in the PVC. Now that PVC was there back in 2019, it's still there today, which is good, right? That means that nothing's really changed. The only thing that we've seen so far that has changed is that clean out on the front of the tank. Alrighty, so if we look inside of here, we're actually gonna see that the water level is way up and into that clean out, all right? So what that means is going on is that this dry well is no longer draining correctly. This is gonna be the dry well number B. Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and we've measured both of these dry wells and we've taken a look at the old report from 2019. So back in 2019, dry well A was observed to have 9 feet of total depth with 9 feet of liquid depth remaining. Dry well B was also observed to be full, which is what we just saw today. So what's changed? In those 5 years, we've saw that dry well B's just continued to be failed. But drywall A has now lost about 6.5 feet of liquid depth, which is quite a bit, right? So that means that they're losing roughly a foot every year. So this septic system doesn't have much life left in it, and it's going to be about time to start budgeting for eventual replacement, sometime in the next 2 to 5 years, depending on the occupancy that's going to be moving forward, right? So why do you want to get an inspection? So for this particular property, it's a real estate transfers, right? So like it's the buyer who wants to see what they're getting when they move into the property. But if you have an older home, especially with something from the 70s, it's super important to make sure that you get it looked at every few years, just to make sure that somebody's keeping an eye on what's going on. This particular property, they have clean outs. So you as a homeowner are more than able to go out there and look for yourself to see where is the water levels, how are things acting, is anything weird, did anything change? That way you know what you're walking into. Yesterday I made a video talking about why you want to make sure you measure the liquid levels, and this is a perfect example of why, right? Now, this particular circumstance, the homeowner has not gone about measuring the liquid levels, but I have my notes from 5 years ago, and it just happens to be that I'm the one taking a look at it again today. So now I compare the two of those together and see what changed. And really the biggest change is drywall A has now significantly increased in the water that's sitting inside of that pit. So the general issue with this is that if you're losing about a foot or so every year, that means that either A, you're not really pumping it enough, or B, you're using too much water and it's oversaturating the fields, right? So it's very important to make sure that whenever you have something like this, you get all of the toilets checked, make sure all the flappers are sealing right, make sure that water's not slow dripping like a sink or a faucet, or maybe even a cartridge from a shower head's not dripping slowly, because even though a little bit of water can go through there, that little bit can actually, over the long period of time, cause big issues, right? So we're still looking at everything. We'll go ahead, take a look at the solid levels, see what that looks like, take a look at the sewer pipe from the house, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and we've looked at the sewer pipe. The sewer pipe's actually going to be made of cast iron, and this one doesn't look too bad. Now, there is a good little belly sitting in there. Bellies are just when the pipe is no longer pitched correctly, or maybe because it's cast iron, it's built up a little bit of scaling and it's starting to pond. The concern with the belly is that it's a potential clogging point, but additionally, the longer that water sits in that pipe, the more of a risk you run for that cast iron pipe to rot out, right? And once it rots out, guess what? Time to replace it. So we're gonna go ahead and recommend keep an eye on it. There was a belly last year. The belly hasn't really increased and made anything look any worse. So I think that it's fine, right? When we're measuring the solids, we're gonna use a product called a sludge judge. The reason it's important to make sure you measure the solids is so that you know how much stuff has accumulated over the course of the last couple of years. So this homeowner's pumped it about 3 years ago, so we wanna see how full is the system. And we measured about a foot, right? So that means if they pumped it 3 years ago and we got about a foot of solids, that means every year they're getting about 4 inches of solids, which is pretty normal for a family of 4, right? We're gonna recommend that they go ahead and pump it sometime in the next 1 to 2 years. It just depends on how many people are gonna be occupying this house. I hope that this information that we've talked about today was useful for you. Maybe you gained some value from it. If you got value from this conversation, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, as I have more videos posted every day on the world of well and septic. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you leave a comment below. I try to get all of them as fast as I can. If there's an area you want me to discuss or a topic you want me to cover, please leave a comment below. I try to get to all of them. Until next time, guys.